Hi, it's Linda Lysakowski with our monthly Learn with Linda series. And today our topic is 3 keys to a successful capital campaign. Now, some of you may be already engaging in a capital campaign and maybe it's not going so good, or maybe you're just contemplating a capital campaign in the future. And now that we're coming out of COVID, you're anxious to get started with that. Or maybe you just want to learn a little bit more about what a capital campaign is all about. So in the next 20 or 30 minutes, we're going to cover some keys to a successful capital campaign. And I've been involved with many campaigns over the years. I've raised probably about helped my clients raise about $40 million in capital campaign money. So I've had a lot of experience with large campaigns, small campaigns, successful campaigns, and some that were not quite as successful. So I'm going to lean on that 30 some years of experience that I've had with capital campaigns to try to help you, so you are one of the people who come out with a successful capital campaign. So first of all, there are many successful ingredients that really help a campaign succeed, but the 3 I'm going to talk about today are a solid infrastructure, which includes a full commitment of the board of directors, a compelling case for support, and effective leadership, because I think these are 3 of the top things that you need to be concerned about. Now, infrastructure itself is important with all your fundraising. You should have things like a software system that enables you to track donations and thank donors and learn more about your donors to help build relationships. But in a capital campaign, it's really essential because this may be the first time you've ever actually taken pledge commitments for any of your fundraising. Most of your fundraising is probably done through special events where money comes in the night of the event or before the event, or maybe even after the event. And maybe you do grant proposals where you write a proposal, you get the funding, and all you have to do afterwards is worry about reporting back to the grantor. And if you've done any kind of major gift fundraising, usually people make a decision and just make an outright gift. But in capital campaigns, there's almost always a pledge period, which may be 3 years, it may be 5 years. Some people may choose to make a payment monthly, they may choose to make it quarterly or annually. So that means you have a lot of tracking to do to make sure that pledges are recorded, that they're being paid, and you send out reminders if they're not being paid at the time that it was agreed upon by the donor. So there's a lot of detail that goes into a capital campaign. And the other thing, because it is so volunteer intensive, which is one of the things we're going to cover last, you want a CRM system or a customer relation management system that allows you to track the results that different volunteers have. Some volunteers are great and they're really bringing in lots of money. Others you think, well, maybe I chose the wrong person to work on this campaign, or maybe they need some extra guidance or extra support, or maybe they're having some problems that they need some help with. So you do need a good CRM system if you're going to do a capital campaign. You also want to have gift acceptance policies in place, because even though they, like a CRM system, are important in all of your fundraising, they're going to be more important during a capital campaign, because here's where you might be running into some unusual gifts that people might want to make. For example, maybe you're planning to build a new building. Well, somebody offers you a gift of land. Well, what if that gift of land is in a wrong location for you? Or what if it's a former gas station and needs to have a $500,000 soil remediation project done before you can use it? And I've run across both of those issues in my career, so I know these things happen. So you need to have some gift acceptance policies that state what kind of gifts you're going to accept and how you're going to dispose of those gifts, and even who you might be willing to accept gifts from. That may make a difference in your organization. So those things are critical. And then you need to have those written procedures. How do donors get thanked? How soon does the letter go out? Who signs the letter? When do they get a phone call? what kind of recognition are they going to get? So you need all of those things in place. Plus, you need staffing. You might not think of that as your infrastructure, but if your development staff is so busy running special events, they may not have time to focus on a capital campaign. And a lot of people dread capital campaigns because they think it's so time consuming and it takes them away from other things that you're doing within the organization's fundraising program. And they think, gosh, how are we ever going to keep track of a capital campaign when we're so busy we can't even monitor all the grant proposals we have to send out and all the events we're running. So you have to have adequate staffing. Oftentimes, I find that people may end up hiring a part-time or a temporary campaign manager just to help them through this. Even if they're working with a consultant, the consultant is not going to do the day-to-day things that a staff member is required to do. So you may have to reassign someone internally to work on this campaign, or you may have to engage additional staffing just to get you through a capital campaign. Now, another thing that sometimes people don't think about as infrastructure, but in a way, it really is, because it's a basis and the foundation for a successful campaign. Is your board going to be engaged in this campaign? And there are many responsibilities that board members have. They should not be your whole campaign cabinet and be the only ones responsible for managing this campaign. But you want to have board involvement at several levels. First of all, do you have board members that are capable of giving money to this campaign? And we all want board members with affluence and influence, but in reality, that's not how it usually works. Most of the time, some of your board members may be affluent and they can give a leadership gift to the campaign. I had one client who's a board member or trustee of the organization, actually gave about a third of the goal was made just by this one board member. But most of the time, that doesn't happen. Some consultants will tell you that the board as a whole should be responsible for a third of the campaign goal. And I can tell you, other than that one incident where one person made a third of the campaign goal gift, I've never run across a board that has been able to support the organization at that level. But every board member needs to know that they need to make a meaningful gift. One of my clients, the chair of their development committee, said as they were getting ready for a campaign, this is a time when we as board members have to step up and make a stretch gift to the organization. So you do expect all of your board members to make a meaningful gift, but that meaningful gift for one board member might be, I ran a small campaign once. It was only about $1.5 million. So we weren't looking for real significant major gifts, but one of their board members gave $50,000 to the campaign. Another board member gave $25, but for her, it was a meaningful gift. So I said, that's no issue at all. I have no problem with that. We can say we have 100% participation from the board, and that's what really counts. Because I've always told my clients, before you ever go out and write one grant proposal or approach one major donor or one business to support this campaign, you have to make sure that 100% of your board members have pledged. And I don't care what the amount is, I just want to see 100%. And I really seriously won't proceed with the campaign until we have that 100%. It is nice also if some of your board members may have access to some potential major donors. And you might think, well, oh, our board's not movers and shakers. They're not wealthy people. They don't have access to major donors. But you'd be surprised when you do some brainstorming with your board. You might find connections that you never dreamed existed on your board. And I've had that experience too. I had a board chair who was a factory worker, and she would come to board meetings dressed in jeans and a sweatshirt right from work. And we were getting ready to enter a capital campaign with that client. And there was a very wealthy couple in their community who were also very philanthropic. And I said, boy, it would be really great if somebody on this board would have access to them. And on the way to that meeting, we were going to be discussing donor prospects. I was going over and over in my mind if any of the board members might possibly have a connection to this couple. And when their name came up, the board chair very matter-of-factly said, "Oh, I can talk to them. He's my cousin." And I was just floored that she had a contact with this extremely wealthy couple, and they did make a very substantial gift to the campaign. So don't write off your board members and think they don't know anybody of wealth, even if they're not wealthy people themselves. Perhaps they sit on a committee at their church or synagogue with somebody who's the wealthiest philanthropist in your community, and you don't know they have that connection and that access to that person. So one of the things that you want to look for is how your board can get involved in helping you identify major donors. You also want your board members to use their influence, and every board member has a sphere of influence. I don't care how wealthy they are, how young they are, how old they are. Every board member has a sphere of influence of people that they know through various different connections, through their work, through their social life, through their kids, through their place of worship. They may have a lot of connections, and you want them to use their influence to promote this campaign and support it in any way possible, and really to support your organization. And then you also want board members who are willing to step up and perhaps take a leadership role in the campaign. Your campaign chair doesn't necessarily have to be a board member. It can be, but they should be willing to take some kind of a leadership role. If you have a board of 15 people, maybe 3 of them will serve on the campaign cabinet, just to show that the board is supportive and to act as kind of a liaison between the full board and the campaign cabinet, which are going to be non-board member volunteers. So your board's role in this whole thing is going to be really, really important. The other thing that is important is developing a case for support. And I have a whole course on developing your case for support. I'm not going to get into a whole lot of detail, but typically in a capital campaign, we develop a preliminary case for support, and then we test that case usually through a planning study, or a feasibility study is another terminology that you might hear. And then you develop a final case for support based on the input you got from the community, because sometimes what you think the community is looking for may not necessarily be what the community is looking for. For example, I worked with a YWCA once, and they wanted to raise a couple $1 million because they were building a new swimming pool. They felt their pool really needed upgrading. And when we went out and did a study in the community, a lot of people said, "I don't think a pool is really the most important thing. Our public schools actually open up their pools to the public, and our kids have access to pools at their school. We would rather see the Y focus on after school programs for kids who have their parents are at work, and when they go home from school, they're alone and they need maybe some help with homework and just some supervision." So they changed the focus of their campaign and focused it on what the community needs were. So what is your case for support? Well, I'm not going to go into a whole lot of detail, but basically it tells people who you are and what you do. In other words, what's the mission of your organization and why do you exist? You came about for a reason. There was somebody in the community saw a need for your organization. And usually a founder or a group of founders got together and said, let's start a nonprofit to deal with these issues. So it's important for you to tell people not only what you do, but why you exist. So your mission statement might say something about, we provide food for the hungry, the people who are underfed or don't have the funds to purchase food. Providing food for the hungry is our mission. Our vision is that no one in this community goes hungry ever again. So that's why you exist, because you're solving a problem. There are hungry people in your community and someone has to feed them. But what's distinctive about you? What does your organization do that maybe nobody else is doing? Or maybe you're serving a population that no one else is serving, or maybe you just do things in a better way. Maybe you have more success with a certain program than other organizations do. But the case for support can't just be about you and your history and your programs and how wonderful you are. Remember, the case for support is a fundraising piece of material. And so you want to tell people what it is you want to accomplish. We need to provide more programs because our community is growing and we have so much more need now for housing assistance, or we have a great need for caring for the elderly because our population is aging. What is it that you want to accomplish? What is your vision for the future? And how is this campaign going to help you do that? Well, if we can build a new building, we can provide services for those new people that are moving into our community. We can expand our programming. We can deliver services in maybe some areas of the community that we haven't provided services before, but more and more people are moving into those neighborhoods. So you have to tell people how this campaign is going to help you, and you have to be specific about how much it's going to cost. Sometimes people are afraid to make the ask, so to speak, and so they sort of downplay it. Well, whatever gift you make will help. Well, no, that's not true. If you're trying to raise $10 million, maybe $100 gift will help if you get enough of them, but you're going to need some $100,000 gifts to raise $1 million. So you can't just kind of beat around the bush. You need to show people how this campaign is going to work, that you need big gifts, you need medium-sized gifts, and you need small gifts. And then you need to tell the donor how they can become involved. They can make an outright gift. They can make a 3-year pledge. They can make a monthly gift. They could give you a gift of appreciated stock, even a gift in kind. I've run some capital campaigns where some of my clients have raised 1/3 of their campaign goal in gifts in kind that directly affected their budget. They got things like excavation and paving the parking lot donated, and cement to build the building, and furniture and technology and all kinds of furnishings. So a lot of times there's many ways that a donor can get involved. But then you also have to say what's in it for the donor. And this sometimes is difficult for people because they think, well, isn't a donor going to just contribute to us because we need money or because they're philanthropic? But they care about your organization, yes, but there's always something in it for them. Maybe it's just a sense of giving back. Maybe you're a university and they're an alum and they really valued the education they got. So they want to contribute to you to give back, but also to give that same opportunity to other young people. So always remember that there's something in it for the donor. Sometimes it's recognition. A donor might want their name on your building or a name on a room within your building. So there could be many reasons that people give, and you want to make sure it's clear. Sometimes they just want to be part of the solution. They want to be involved in a community project that they know is really going to help the community. But always write your case for support from the donor's point of view. And I'll kind of sum up this discussion on the case with a definition of a case for support. There are many definitions out there. This is one of my favorite, though, from Ted Bailey. And he says that taking into account everything that's been said about giving and capital campaigns, that the case should aim high, tell people what you really need. Don't try to beat around the bush. Provide perspective, arouse a sense of history and continuity. Tell them about your success. And urgency. And there's a fine line between the word urgency and desperation. You don't ever want to, in a case for support, whether it's a capital campaign or your annual giving, you don't ever want to tell people that, oh gosh, if you don't support us, we're going to have to close our doors. That's not what motivates people to give. They give because they want to make a difference in their community, and they give because your organization is filling a need, not because you have a need. And what I really like about this definition the most is the last part about have whatever stuff is needed to warm the heart and stir the mind, because your case has to be both emotional and rational. Emotion is always what draws people in. Think about when you get a fundraising solicitation that has a picture of babies or kids or dogs or cats on it. Everybody's heart is warmed by that. But before you get out the checkbook and write a check to this organization, you probably want to know things like who's on their board. Do they have staff with the credentials to do these programs? Do they have the right facilities? Are they financially stable? You want to ask those rational questions too. So the case really has to be emotional and rational, but remember, emotions usually trump the rational side of thinking for most people, but not all. It depends a lot on the size of the gift. If they're making $100 gift, probably emotion is what drew them in. But if they're making $1 million gift, they want to know more detail about your organization and your plan. Now, my favorite part of this presentation is campaign volunteers, because to me, a capital campaign and a good volunteer structure go hand in hand. And I could list all the capital campaigns that I've ever been involved with, and there are dozens. And I could list the campaigns that had the best volunteers. And by far, those were the best volunteers, were always the most successful campaigns. So you need to have a campaign cabinet. And as I said, this should not be just your board. I've worked with some people that said, well, we don't need to go out and recruit volunteers. Our board will handle this campaign. That's a big mistake. First of all, your board has a lot of other things on their mind. They're governance minded. They have to worry about the facility itself and working with the architects and financing. Do they have the budget to do this campaign? Are they going to have to go out and loan money? They have day-to-day things to think about within the organization. So they're not going to be able to focus all their energy on this capital campaign. You want them involved, but not overly involved, because it may take away from their other duties. So you should have a campaign cabinet that includes some board members, but a lot of community members, because here's where you're going to reach out and open up new networks, new contacts for you, new volunteers that maybe haven't volunteered before for your organization. So the campaign cabinet, the size depends a lot on how much you're trying to raise, how large the geographic scope of your organization is. But I usually recommend about 20 to 30 people on your campaign cabinet. And usually they're the people who are chairing committees. You might have some people in your committee who aren't directly responsible for chairing a committee, but you know their influence will mean a lot in the community. But you have different committees, and we break them down by divisions. And when it comes to a capital campaign, the divisions are different in every organization. But some standard ones that are almost always prevalent are a leadership gifts committee and a major gifts committee. Sometimes in small campaigns, I've combined this and we've just had one leadership major gifts committee. But oftentimes, if it's a big campaign, you want the leadership gifts, the top 10 people maybe that are going to contribute, or maybe the top 3 or 5 people. And then other people who are able to make significant major gifts. And then you might have a small business committee, or you might have an alumni division if you have alumni. You might have a member division. You might have regional divisions if you're larger in geographic area. So this is going to be different depending on your organization. But all of those committees are responsible for soliciting donors. But then you have some other committees that perhaps are not going to be direct solicitors. People like the event committee, because you're going to be doing events, not fundraising events. These are events that are related to the campaign, such as a kickoff event, a groundbreaking event, a dedication, a recognition event. And some of those are combined. Your kickoff might just be your groundbreaking if you're ready to break ground at the same time you're ready to kick off the campaign. Or your recognition event might come with a dedication and open house. But there are going to be different events, and maybe some cultivation events if you have to spend more time cultivating donors. So you'll have committees or that do all of those things. And then you might have a public relations committee. Now, maybe you don't need this because you have a PR department, you're a fairly large organization, and they're going to handle all the publicity. But if it's a small organization and you don't have staff to do this, your volunteers can help work on approving the case for support and figuring out what kind of brochures and what kind of printed materials and what kind of electronic materials you're going to need to create public awareness of your campaign. You may or may not need a finance committee. Again, if you have a CFO or a strong finance committee on your board, maybe they're going to deal with things like budget for the campaign, going to the bank and maybe asking for a short-term loan if you're ready to break ground and your pledges haven't been paid yet, but you want to start construction. If you don't have that in-house, then maybe you'll need a finance committee. And the same thing with the building committee. Usually internally, the staff deals with the architects and the construction managers and the construction company and all those kind of things, and maybe even land purchasing. But if you don't have that in-house and you're a very small organization, you can still do a capital campaign, but you might want to recruit some volunteers who are experts in those areas, because they can be the ones to work with the architect and the builders. So what does a capital campaign volunteer do? Well, the campaign cabinet usually guides the whole campaign and sometimes more of the project if they don't have enough staff. But all the members of your campaign cabinet and your other volunteers should be involved in identifying prospective donors. Who do they know that could support this campaign? That's why you want to get community people involved, because it's expanding your networks tremendously. Cultivating prospective donors. If you're an organization that hasn't had a strong background in annual giving, and maybe you've never run a capital campaign before, maybe your donors really need some cultivation before you can make the ask, which is going to mean your campaign will run a little bit longer. But it's worth it to cultivate donors rather than take a small gift from a donor who's capable of making you a big gift. Doing some cultivation is helpful. And then identifying campaign volunteers. When I tell people that most of the campaigns I've been involved with have had several hundred volunteers, they usually kind of run screaming when they hear that. And they say, oh, we can't do a campaign. We couldn't possibly recruit that many volunteers. But you don't have to. All you need is to recruit the campaign cabinet, and then they will come up with ideas on other volunteers that they want to work with, people that maybe they've worked with before, and people that know the part of the campaign that they're working on. If they're major gifts committee members, they should be people who give major gifts themselves. But your campaign cabinet will help you identify a lot of volunteers. And of course, you're always going to ask your campaign volunteers also to make a gift themselves. It's just like with your board, giving of their time and talent is one thing, but they have to make a financial commitment before they can be successful at asking other people to give money. So most of these volunteers are going to be involved in asking, but they should all be giving money to this campaign. So how do you go about recruiting volunteers? Well, first you start with establishing what divisions you need. Do you need an alumni division? Do you need a board division? Do you need a staff division? If you're a staff of 2 or 3 people, you probably don't need a division to approach the staff for their gifts. But if you have 200 people, the staff appeal might be a big deal. So establish what divisions you need, and then figure out how many volunteers you need in each division. Usually groups like your leadership gift division, their population that they're going to be contacting is very limited. They might only be looking for 5 leadership gifts, so they may only identify 15 leadership prospects. So they probably only need about 3 people in that committee to do that. So think about each committee and how many people they're going to be contacting, and how many people you need. And then develop the skills and talents that are needed. And then develop a job description for every single volunteer, from the campaign chair and the honorary chair, if you have one, down to the people who are going to be helping stuff envelopes and making phone calls. You want a job description for every single volunteer. And then I always like to prepare a volunteer recruitment packet or a handbook so that when you go to talk to these people, they know exactly what's expected of them. What's the timeline? What's the goal? How much is my division trying to raise? What's the plan? What's the organization's mission and vision? And who else is involved in this campaign? You give them all as much information as you can possibly give them. And then once you have all that done, then you recruit the chair people first. And you could have one chairperson and a vice chairperson. You might have two co-chairpersons. You might have what they call the office of the chair. I worked on one campaign where we had 3 chair people and they all worked in conjunction with each other. You might also have an honorary chair. Sometimes that helps because if it's somebody who's well-known and well-recognized, maybe they don't have time to devote to really work on the campaign, but just lending their name will be an important step for you. And then once you have the chairs in place, then you recruit your campaign cabinet members with input from those chairs, because they probably know people that they want to work with and that they will suggest. And then appoint the committee chairs as you're recruiting them. Say, we'd like you to serve on our cabinet. We want you to chair the major gifts division, or we want you to chair the alumni division. So of course that person is going to be an alum if you want them to chair the alumni division. If you want them to chair the business division, you want a business leader. So then once you appoint those chairs, I think then you're going to be off and running. So the one question that a lot of people ask sometimes is, well, where do we find all these volunteers? And there's many places you can start with. First of all, if you have annual fund donors or event volunteers, they're people who are already supporting your organization. And so they may be much more likely to agree to serve in a capital campaign position than someone who really doesn't know your organization that well. If you have a development committee, and I hope you all do, maybe some of them would be on the capital campaign cabinet or recommend people. Well, you know, I'm already pretty involved in this aspect of the development committee, but I know somebody who would be great as a chairperson, or great to chair this division or that division, or to serve as a volunteer. And you do want to have some of your board of directors, of course, on this campaign cabinet, but also ask your board for ideas for people that they know who might be willing to get involved. Maybe your governance committee of your board has a list of people who were suggested as board members, but some of them said, oh, I can't accept right now. I'm too busy. I'm serving on another board or 2 other boards, and I can't take on another role right now. Or maybe you just had enough positions filled that you didn't even get to those people and talk to them. So ask your governance committee, do they have some suggested people that were suggested as board members that might be willing to step in and do a short-term assignment on a capital campaign? And then hopefully you've done a feasibility or planning study, and the people that you interviewed there, the consultant will usually ask them, would you be willing to take a leadership role in this campaign, or any role at all? And they'll come back with some ideas. But also they should be asking the people interviewed, do you have any ideas for people who might volunteer? And sometimes that happens very frequently. I interviewed a gentleman that was the president of a bank for a Big Brothers Big Sisters organization. And I asked him if he'd be willing to take a leadership role in the campaign. And he said, oh, I really can't. We're in the process of building a couple new branches and I'm just swamped right now. But one of my vice presidents is a big sister, and I think she'd be great on your committee. And of course, we got her on the campaign cabinet. If you're involved in the local chamber of commerce, that's a good way to identify business leaders who might be interested If you've been involved in leadership programs, which sometimes are run by the chambers of commerce, that's another opportunity. Those people are looking for volunteer opportunities in nonprofits. And then civic and professional groups, you should be out speaking to Rotary and Lions clubs and all the different civic and professional organizations in your community. And oftentimes there you will find a good source of volunteers. And then just your basic networking. I've recruited volunteers in some very unlikely spots, sometimes total strangers that I met while we were waiting in line in a restaurant. And I started talking to them about the organization I was working for and found they were really interested in it. And they came and volunteered. So you never know where you're going to find a good volunteer. So I think if you can keep these three things, there's certainly a lot more that goes into running a capital campaign than I could cover in these short amount of time that I've had with you. But if you can keep these three things in mind, I think it's really going to help you going forward. And if you are seriously considering a capital campaign, you may want to sign up for my course called Capital Campaigns. Yes, you can do it. And this is an 8-lesson course, which covers about 8 hours. So we get into a lot more detail than I could cover in 30 minutes or so. But this course, I'm excited about it because I've just updated the course and it's new, kind of new and improved, as they say. First of all, I've updated it consists of 8 video presentations, which you take at your own time. You don't have to sign up and take it at any specific time. Once you pay for the course, you can take it all in 1 week or over the next couple months or over the next year if you choose to spread it out. But the new course is going to focus a little bit more on capital campaigns in a virtual age because things have changed, as we know, and we're becoming much more virtual with things. I'm including some more handouts. And the course, I think, is really going to be a good thing for anyone who's serious about a capital campaign or really just needs to learn more about it. And include with all of my courses is a free ebook. And the ebook that comes with this one is the quick guide to how to run a successful capital campaign. So I think you'll enjoy this course and get a lot out of it. And the good news I have for you is the course for 8 lessons, all the handouts, the free ebook, everything is $397, which is a small investment if you're thinking about raising millions of dollars or even hundreds of thousands. But because you participated in this Learn with Linda, you'll get a 20% discount if you purchase the course today. So if you just use the code that's included in with a PowerPoint that will be accompanying this course, and that code is LWLCC20. So LWLCC, all capital letters, 20. So I hope you'll take a look at this course because I think it'll give you a lot more information to really arm you to have the best capital campaign you can do. So I look forward to seeing you in the course, and I look forward to seeing you in my next Learn with Linda. Bye.